welcome everyone to Infinite Prattle. Today's episode is an incredibly special one because not only do we have an amazing guest on, but it's the first time that I can see you looking around. But it's the first time we've
get out of the way.
It's the first time we've ever done a video recording on the podcast. So expect probably more disaster than usual, I would think. So because not only now you can hear me, but unfortunately you can now see me. But let's talk about Dex and what he's got to talk about with his voice acting career and his podcast and everything that's led him to where he is now. You're listening to Infinite Prattle with your host Stephen. Thanks for joining me for unscripted, unedited, everything. Excellent. Welcome, Dex. Thank you very much for coming on the podcast.
For having me.
Excellent.
I think. Yes, I do love your intro.
I would like to say there was a lot of thought that went into it, but it was 5 minutes on a Sunday afternoon when I was like, I really need to make a everything in my show is last minute. I tell you, everything's like, I should do this, then I just do something and go, that'll do. So very professional.
I'm a great believer in you can over prepare.
Definitely.
And the best things happen by accident. So we are.
Welcome to Infinite Prattle, Series 4. We kind of contacted through LinkedIn. We kind of, I don't remember when it was now. It was towards the end of last year, I think, wasn't it? And we've been a little bit of contact, and I just thought it'd be really cool for my listeners to hear about your story and what you're up to currently, and the podcast that you've now got. And since we connected, you've now got your own podcast, and you've released, is it 4 episodes now? I think it is.
We've had four, another one due this Sunday. Although my guest this week was ill, so I'm going to be making it up on Sunday. Yes.
I would like to say if you need any tips, but you know, I wing every single one. So, but yeah. So what's your podcast about?
I shall probably What, the one this Sunday? I've no idea.
Thus far, at least, anyway.
Thus far. So my podcast is called Dex Phoenix from the Flames.
Yes.
And it's called Phoenix from the Flames because I've had a number of times in my life where... am I allowed to swear? I'm going to swear.
Yes, you can swear.
Where shit has happened.
Yep.
Like many people, I'm not alone. I find myself emerging from the ashes of whatever conflagration has happened, on a new path, coming out of it, not smelling of the wrong thing, but it's sort of worked out. And it occurred to me, I've got to the sort of point in my life where it's occurred to me that actually there might be a bit of a story to tell. And certainly, if nothing else, it's a way of me sort of documenting it.
Yes.
But also, I think that if it resonates with people, if they've had the same experiences, or if they find themselves in that circumstance, the hope is that it just gives people a little bit of thought that, well, this too is temporary, and I'll get through this, and it feels like the end of the world at the moment, but it isn't, and I can come out the other side, stronger, better. What's the song? Stronger, harder, better, faster.
Yeah. We're both showing our age there by not knowing that.
Yeah. That was surely only last year.
I'm not even going to Google that.
No, that's effectively so I've had 4 episodes, which has just been me talking about 3 main sort of shitstorms that have happened in my life. So a little bit of a potted sort of autobiography, really. And I've kind of run out of stuff. So I thought, hey, I'm going to get guests on. And unfortunately, my wonderful guest that I've got lined up is not well. So this Sunday will be me again. I'll try and do a podcast every 2 weeks. But it was your wonderful self inviting me on here that made me think, hey, I could get some guests on, and then they can do some of the talking.
Yeah, definitely.
I see what you did. I see what you did.
There you go. You see. I just worry that people are sick of me talking. If I'm honest with you, like it's like I get sick of myself talking. So like I'm thinking, if I can give someone else a chance, then I can blame them if people moan about the talking.
I've listened to your podcast. I don't think anyone will get sick of you talking, but I know what you mean. It is nice sometimes.
Yeah,
It
definitely.
is nice sometimes to have some other ideas injected in.
And I think it's and having listened to your podcast, I think as you say, it's kind of what you said then kind of resonates with me. Like trying to tell a story and trying to document it a little bit. And I think in a weird roundabout way, that's kind of what I'm doing with my podcast. Is I'm kind of telling stories from my life and just saying things that I like. So earlier in the podcast, I was talking just about songs and stuff that I liked and stories from my past and just thoughts that enter my head that I just want to give my opinion and my view on and just tell people stories really. So it's kind of like a similar thing. But having listened to your podcast, I can highly recommend it for one. And it's not because you're on the podcast. Having listened to it, it's wonderful.
You wait till I'm gone. See what he says then.
And the career you've chosen to go into, I can highly see why you've chosen to go into that as well. How you've got a very soothing voice and a nice clear voice and listening to the podcast
to earn some money at it, but
definitely.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, but it was and the story in your podcast is I can't believe that you've got nothing else to talk about. I think that there must be a myriad of stories that interweave all that drama and all those.
Not all of them are broadcastable. To be fair.
I think sometimes we have to keep some stuff to ourselves, don't we, as well? But I think the content in the podcast, and I don't really want you to give too much away, but if you talk about some of the things that you touch on, if you don't mind, because I was really drawn into the story, and it's a very human story, and it's very much a story I think that we can all relate to, and also think what if that happened to me? How would I react? And I think it's a very positive story the way you explain it. And I think it's just I would highly genuinely I would recommend people to go and listen to your podcast just for that insight into basically rising like a phoenix from the flames. So what kind of roughly is your podcast about? I want people to go and listen to it and enjoy it, but just in general.
But the problem is that if I give, which I will,
you can't give too much away, can you? Because it's very delicate, isn't it?
This is the thing.
Yeah.
If I give a very potted version of it, it sounds like you'd want to run a mile from it.
Yeah,
because
definitely.
it's full of death and mental health issues.
Yeah.
And you'd think, my God, that sounds like a stone cold drag. And how on earth can you talk for 20 minutes on that and it be at all humorous or interesting or anything other than whatever? But it is not. It's not intended as to be full of pathos and to be full of negativity. The events I talk about, I talk about them because they happen to me, but I'm talking about them with the benefit of hindsight. And so I can see the when somebody dies, for example, you want to remember them, but you want to remember the funny things that happen, the fun times, the humorous things. So the first one is my lovely mum, who was the first person in my life who passed away, who really meant something to me.
Yeah.
And I was 30 something, and it affected me deeply. It was, far more than I ever realized it would. And so in the podcast, I talk about the kind of person that she was, with some of the anecdotes. And in fact, there's many more, but, some of the anecdotes of things that that she was quite a rebel. So she was in the Women's Institute. And one of the anecdotes, which I'll share, was she came back one day a bit miffed because they had to write a poem about spring, and she thought it was all a bit.
I remember.
It's all a bit.
Yes,
you remember this?
Yeah.
She thought it was all a bit twee and a bit kind of typical WI, Jam and Jerusalem. And so they turn up at the next meeting, and these women stand up and talk about the gambling lambs and the scudding clouds in the blue sky and the daffodils. And my mum stands up. And to the horror of some of them, says, you've got a little script. She says, the spring has sprung, the grass has riz. I wonder where my husband is. Up the red line, down the plough. He really ought to be gardening now. And he sat down, and there were one or two of them apparently who laughed, but most of them were that kind of Blue Rinse Brigade, horrified
absolutely
that she hadn't taken it seriously. And that's the thing, it's really tough to remember that about someone when you're really, a really short while after they're not around anymore. But what time does is it doesn't make that loss any more keen, any more painful, but it does give you that perspective to be able to look back and at least enjoy the stuff that happened when that person was around. So yeah, and the Phoenix from the Flames part of that was that, around about 10 years prior, I had passed my motorcycle test, and I loved doing it. It was an intensive course, it was a week-long course. It always tempted to call it a crash course, but you shouldn't do that with motorcycle training.
No, definitely not.
It's an intensive course, not a crash course. And absolutely loved it. I thought, oh my God, I want to be a motorcycle instructor, and just didn't, just did the kind of suited and booted corporate thing. And my mum not being around anymore, basically something clicked in my head, and I was like, I could die. Anyone could die.
Yeah.
This person I thought would be around forever, it isn't around anymore. And that prompted me to become a motorcycle instructor. I took a massive pay cut and lived in a caravan for a while, but I did it. And I actually ended up running my own business doing it, and I loved it to pieces. And I've got, friends for life from it. It was a fantastic chapter that probably wouldn't have happened had it not been for that, rather shitty thing that happened.
Yeah.
So I think you can't go through life insulated, shielded from stuff happening, and you don't know how you're going to react when it does. But actually, there are positives. There's a silver lining that comes out of it. So potentially,
it's
not always possible.
And I think that kind of like your outlook from it of
just water,
business.
honestly. It's really not.
I'm a bit jealous.
Sorry,
I'm a bit jealous actually. When I saw you drinking that before, I was thinking, is that a bit of hooch?
It's tonic with some lemon in. Very exciting. Might be a bit of gin, but yeah.
Maybe it's hard. Yeah, but I think
tiny bit.
And I think the whole premise of the Phoenix from the Flames, as you say, like everyone goes through has to go through life and death kind of thing, and that death happens. And I think the first time it happens to you, I think the first person that passed away for me that I was really close to was my granddad. And I don't say I'm a cold-hearted person, but I kind of react to death in a slightly different way. I kind of know it's going to happen, and just kind of accept it. But I think the first time it happened to someone that was super close to me, it kind of hit home a little bit, and it kind of spurred me on. Maybe not in the same way to quit my job and go and invest in something, but I kind of think I just was like, life's too short to. I think I took the thing, life's too short to put up with people's bullshit. And I just went through life with like, I'm going to do what I want to do, and be damned kind of thing. Like, I'm going to be, I think I'm a good person. I try and be a good person, but I'm just going to be like that and really not take kind of people's, negativities and stuff, and just try and be me and just try and live a good life. And I think.
How old were you when,
oh God, I'm trying to think now, actually. I was probably just under 30, I think. Probably just under 30, like 28, maybe 29. And I think it's one of the things until
last year then.
Yeah, of course, yes. I'll give you some. I'll send you the check later.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah,
but I think it's.
You got me on for a reason, right?
Exactly. But I think when you have a big life event like that, it does put things in perspective about a bit of everything. And for some people, that might not be someone's death. It could be just a different event where, you lose a friend, but your friendship breaks up or something like that, and that can be a thing that turns your brain and you think to yourself, God, I've been looking at things all wrong. But yeah, I think the way you describe things in your podcast, and obviously that's not the only story, but we won't go into any more. I think we'll leave the secrecy, let people go and discover it. But for me, it was just so nice to hear positive from a negative. Don't sound cliched, but
Yeah.
it was kind of like
Yeah.
you've taken something that's bad and you've used it to benefit. And let's face it, them stories about people is what keeps them alive. There's the memories and that, and sharing them stories is what really keeps people's memory alive, isn't it? Because I've got so many good memories of my granddad. And there's a whole story about I never got to go to my granddad's funeral because there was a big bust up in the family and I caused it. But that's for another time.
You caused it.
Yeah, I didn't. I'm not going to go in. I won't go into it because we want to
Oh
hear
my
your
gosh!
story. But
No, you can't drop that and not tell us. I know you're supposed to be the host, but no, come on. What's
Well, basically what it was is I wanted. I think it was struggling to deal with it, and I didn't know how to handle it. So my granddad lived in Ireland because my mum's Irish, so it's that side of the family. And I didn't want to. I just wanted to get my own way to their house. I didn't want to because it was under the Irish kind of like tradition. He was in the house in a coffin, open casket, and I really couldn't deal with that. I don't know why. I didn't want to because I knew I was kind of going to be forced to look at him when I got there. Really, it was kind of like go and see granddad kind of thing, and I didn't know how to deal with that. So I kind of just wanted to make my own way from the airport when I landed. Like just get the bus and just take some time. I mean, I've now landed. I mean, in my head I was like, I've landed. That hour bus transfer is prepping myself, and one of my family members basically wanted to come and pick me up, and I basically said, we don't normally want to visit, so why would you do it now? Just let me do what I want. It took a while to get to that point. They forced me into a corner to say that, but I think with the emotion, I just bit back and was like, listen, let me just do what I want to do. You wouldn't normally insist in picking me up. There's a bus. I'm going to get the bus. I'm an adult. I'm fine. And that was before I'd left Liverpool. By the time I landed in Belfast, it didn't go well for me, let's say. And I was on the ferry home the next morning and didn't go to the funeral. So,
oh my gosh!
But
Families.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm completely at peace with it. And I was at the time. I was upset, but everything happens for a reason. And I got the train back from Ireland. Well, not the train, obviously. I had to get a ferry first. But I got the ferry over, the train back through Scotland. And as I was traveling back, my best friend got hit by a car. And I was able to go and see him in hospital. So, in a weird way, like...
You wouldn't have been there.
I would not have been there and to support my friend. And I've never been one to believe in funerals anyway. I don't feel like you need to go and send someone off. I feel like there's some bigger part, and you just send a message to the world, into the universe, and I've probably got the best background ever for this moment. I feel like you just go, I know you've died, and the universe knows how much I care for you, kind of thing. I don't need to stand in a church or a memorial hall to represent that. So yeah, and I think that things can turn around so quickly in emotional times, can't they? And it spiraled quite quickly, let's say.
Was your friend okay?
Yeah. He was lying in hospital, and he ended up that he'd broke his leg quite badly. But he was in hospital about 4 hours before they X-rayed him, so they didn't realize he was lying there with a broken leg. So, but yeah, it was. But he was there, and because I had a car, I was able to help with ferrying people to hospital and stuff. So it worked out well, and I think it's weird how things work out, isn't it? So
I've got this theory. I'm not religious, and I don't believe in fate. I think we can determine what we do.
Yeah.
But I do have a kind of very half-baked theory that that when you look backwards, there's a kind of strand of continuity, and that only happened because that happened, and that couldn't have happened if this didn't.
Indeed.
And I suppose it's summed up by the everything happens for a reason, but I think it's probably more complex than that. But it does feel like, in retrospect, at least, there's a bit of a plan going on.
Indeed. When I was in Belfast, my family member came to pick me up, and we had a massive argument in the car, and I just got out of the car and started walking. I didn't know where to. I was just walking in the middle of nowhere, like about 4 miles from Belfast International, and it was the clearest night. It was so clear you could actually see the Milky Way across the sky. It was like a bit like my background, and I just looked and I just thought to my granddad, I just said, "Listen, you'll make this turn out the way it needs to." And I remember thinking that, I was on the ferry the next day, so it probably didn't turn out the way to go to the funeral. But in retrospect, I was at my mate's bedside that evening, comforting his mum and making sure he was all right. And yeah, and it's so for me, weirdly, not needing to go to my granddad's funeral and probably being too emotional to go to anyway, because I wouldn't have been able to hold my water. I've never been one to keep stum. I find it very difficult not to tell people what I think. Partly the reason why I do a podcast.
You hidden that so well.
So yeah, it is, and I think what you say is like, that whole. Maybe it's cliche to say everything happens for a reason, but I think sometimes you do see weird connections and things. And when you do like represent, you know what I'm trying to say? Retro. That word that means looking back.
Retrospectively.
When you can you say that word? And
have you been on my gin?
You know what? I'm drinking bottled water, and it's got a bit of juice in, but I'm not. I was
going to say it's a funny colour. Where did you get it from? A ditch somewhere?
I tell you what. I don't know. Maybe there is something in it. I don't know. I'll have to ask my wife what she used this bottle for previously. But yeah, I think when you look back, I think sometimes you can see a connection, can't you? But yeah, it's very unusual how things go. But I would say to people, highly recommend Dex's podcast, and the link will be in the description of this episode, along with links to his LinkedIn. If you're okay with that, Dex, we'll
yes, of course. Yeah. I mean, I could do with a few more followers.
I think you're doing all right. I think
you know what? This might be a little bit controversial, but it's linked. See what I did there? It's linked to what you just said about funerals and not really kind of perhaps fully needing them or getting them. They're useful sometimes for some people. I get that.
Yeah.
And certainly they've been useful on occasion for me. But when I've been really close to someone, the funeral has been very much for other people because I've done my own grieving separately.
Yeah.
But one of the things that and perhaps I don't understand it because I've never experienced it, but I've always found, and this is perhaps a bit controversial, is when somebody dies suddenly, which must be the worst thing. I've never had it. It must be, I reckon, the absolute worst. This is a cheery podcast, everyone. Rely on Dex. We'll move off death soon. I don't fully understand the flowers at the place they died, on some random bend in a country lane or something, because that wasn't a special place to them. In fact, it was the worst possible place. And actually, the special place was the park they always went to, or the church they frequented, or the football ground, or whatever. And I sort of get having a bench at those places. I do sort of get the flowers at the roadside. I'm not completely callous, but I just think,
because I think the same thing. Because I'm very much like you. Like if I go to a funeral, I kind of feel like I'm there for other people because I'm okay, and I'd prefer to like be upset somewhere else. Yeah, the whole flowers especially from the previous job I used to do with on the railway and stuff. You get like memorials at the most odd places, and as you say, that's probably the saddest place because, as you say, that's where the event happened. Where surely you'd want it to be,
it's quite a difficult place to visit as well. Exactly. I would imagine.
Yeah, exactly.
Because it's at a really dangerous, it's a railway track you can't get to, or a
roadside or something. Yeah.
But as I say, I've never experienced that sort of loss. So, I imagine that there's something deep within people that they feel they want to recognise that place in some way.
It happens enough that it must be a thing, mustn't it? It does happen. Yeah. It's a frequent thing, isn't it? Well,
I've seen the one with I don't remember where it was now. It was a cyclist, and they'd done like a ghost bike. Someone will know.
Yes.
Have you seen this? The white bike and everything.
We've had that in our town as well. Yeah, we've had that. Yeah. It's I think it's just an outlet for you, whatever grief you have sometimes, isn't it? It's just a place to outpour
whatever works.
Yeah.
My one of my sisters-in-law. I have to tell you this story. It's about death, but I find it.
We're in it now. Let's just carry on. We're in it now. So I can't tell this story without giving away the big event in the second podcast, but I'll give it away anyway. You don't have to. It's fine. It's fine. We can keep it as a cliffhanger.
It's this story. So there was a death of someone very close to me, who I was married to, so particularly close. and I had 2 small children at the time, so that makes it particularly poignant, I guess. Although they were, quite little, so it perhaps doesn't affect them at the time as much as it would have done if they were older. But we're not. I've never done the thing with them where you go, "Oh, mummy's watching everything you do from heaven," because
Yeah.
who wants to be watched when they're on the loo, or if we won't do that because mummy will know. I've never done that, and I've never done the look, if you look up to the stars, you can talk to her, because I don't believe it. You can certainly talk to her, but you'd have to look, it's not the stars. But anyway, they a few weeks after, or it might have even been a year later, but anyway, they were with her sister, so my sister-in-law, and without asking me, she decided to send some messages up to for the kids. Send some messages up to mummy in the stars, right? And those lanterns you can get where you light a little candle in the bottom,
and you let them go and they
the
float
ones
up.
that kill cows.
Yeah,
The ones that kill cows, if they end up in the field, the cow eats them and dies.
Thatched cottages and stuff like that.
That's the one. So, I'm a horrible person finding this funny. So the kids wrote these messages to mummy. I think they were thinking, I'm sure dad wouldn't go for this, but we'll write the messages to mummy. Mummy, we love you, whatever. They put them in these things. They got lit. They went up and they got stuck in the trees. There's a light in the wind was, the trees were high and the wind was, and they're like, yeah, mummy will probably read that.
Yeah, they'll be fine. It'll be fine. Yeah.
And they just sat in the tree and generally sort of burnt out and just sort of hung there through the rain over the next few days, just getting sodden. And
well, it could have been worse. They could have acted like kindling, and just the whole thing could have gone up.
Yeah, that would have been an even better story. It's a bit like the story of people who go and distribute ashes and get the wind wrong and end up with a face full of grandma or whatever.
Yes.
And, no one wants a face full grandma.
Definitely not. Definitely
not.
Well,
certain niche websites.
Well, I was
go there.
I was going to say there probably is someone. Well, oddly enough, I think that's probably the best place to leave it for now. We said this might go wrong, didn't we?
Yeah, I'm really sorry.
Oh God, there is a part 2. It will be coming up. We're not going to get changed or anything. We're going to record it straight after this. There's no mystery to this show anymore.
It's a different day. I'll take my jacket off.
We'll lie about it then. But yeah, well, thank you very much for joining us, Dex. We'll see
You're
you
very
in part
welcome.
2, which will also be a video episode where we'll be talking about your latest venture, your new career.
Yes, we'll try and avoid death,
and we'll try and speak less about death. If I would say not, because it may come up, I don't know. But yeah, we'll talk about that. And thank you very much for joining us for this episode, Dex. And we'll see everyone else very, very soon. Thanks for listening to Infinite Prattle with your host Stephen. Follow me on social networks at Infinite Prattle. And don't forget to subscribe. Thanks very much.